for me, it was like this idea of like, if we really want to advocate for life, and I was very passionate about the pro-life movement, like we can do that in the business world. We can do that in the for-profit space. It doesn't have to wait on politicians to make these policies come to life. Like we can have a real change saving lives without the government. We can do that ourselves. There's a lot more work we can do on the day-to-day.
Hey, what's going on? This is Brett Snodgrass with another episode of the Iron Deep podcast. Got Anton Krecic on the podcast with me today. What's going on, Anton?
Hey, Brett, great to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited for this episode. I've been reading about you. You got a lot of content out there, a lot of videos, and you just have this amazing mission behind your business, 7 Weeks Coffee. And guys, I want to just introduce Anton. He is the CEO of 7 Weeks Coffee. It's a mission-driven coffee company that is funding the pro-life movement one cup at a time. They launched in 2021. Anton has turned a simple idea into a national movement. They donate 10% of every sale to pregnancy care centers across America. They have donated and raised over $1 million supporting more than 1,000 pregnancy centers in all 50 states, helping women and families choose life. This is an amazing mission, Anton. I'm super excited that you're bold. Number one.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the idea of what we're doing, empowering consumers. And yeah, it's time to take a stance for, a biblical worldview and especially a pro-life worldview.
Yeah, man. So true. I just want to ask this, man. Obviously, before all this, before coffee and everything, you probably had a conviction, right? I mean, you said, "Hey, I want to stand for something. I want to stand for a kingdom-minded business." And so this conviction. Can you tell me about just that moment in time?
Yeah, I'd say it's less a moment, but more moments in time that kind of led to where 7 Weeks Coffee is today. I've always had a passion for entrepreneurship, and I've always had a passion for politics. Advancing biblical values. Before I actually started 7 Weeks Coffee, I worked here in Washington D.C. doing fundraising for a lot of faith-based and conservative organizations, political organizations. And so I had a lot of things kind of like, I'd say, culminating the background where, then led to the idea of 7 Weeks Coffee. I got to visit a pregnancy center years ago and just see the work that they're doing. And was just totally moved by the stories they share of the lives they're saving in their communities and the moms that need support. And so that was all kind of leading up over, I'd say, a course of like 3 years to what led me to Googling pro-life coffee and then realizing nothing came up and feeling that light bulb moment of like, I am starting a pro-life coffee company today. And it was 2 weeks after I got married and I hit the ground running that night. And, here we are.
Wow. One of the most stressful things in life is, number one, getting married that first year of marriage, right, or starting a business, right?
Did it all in 2 weeks.
That's right. That's awesome. What did your wife think about this? I mean, you kind of came up with this idea. What was her response to that?
Well, she was shocked. It's funny. You're 2 weeks into marriage. You're thinking about like just getting settled into life and marriage and routine. And I'm calling her saying, I'm going to start this, pro-life coffee company. What do you think? And she was like, wait, what are you doing? A coffee company? I'm like, no, it's a great idea. She's like, and then, well, this is the funniest part. She said, what are you going to call it? And I said, I don't know yet. And she goes, oh, what don't moms sometimes, when they're pregnant, say like my little bean is like this term of endearment. And she's like, well, when is a baby the size of a coffee bean? I'm like, that's a good question. So I look it up. At 7 weeks, a baby is the size of a coffee bean. At the same time, a heartbeat's detected on ultrasound. I'm like, perfect. 7 Weeks Coffee. Donate 10% of every sale so moms can hear their child's heartbeat for the first time at pregnancy care centers, which provide ultrasound services. So name and mission all came together in that one phone call, but it literally has been our marriage from the beginning is this, this company. And luckily and gratefully, she's been on board and, has been a part of it, behind the scenes, but incredibly integral part of the business.
Yeah. So in your marriage, would you say, are you mostly the dreamer and she's more the grounded? I know marriage, sometimes there's a yin and yang there. I'm the dreamer and just roll the dice. My wife say, hey, wait a minute, let's make dinner tonight.
Yeah, it's probably a little more of that. It's funny though. She does, my wife, I'm so grateful because she has a great, supportive attitude with this everything, just, never never feeling discouraged and never feeling, like I'm coming out of left field, but always curious. She's always interested and, really supportive. And I think that was so beneficial because I'm literally telling her I'm starting this coffee company, which, I didn't have any background in coffee. I didn't have any, I've never started a business before. I've always liked business. And,
Yeah.
it, on paper, it might have not made sense, but, she was really supportive from the beginning and helped, grow it to what it is today.
Yeah. And it sounds like you guys have been super successful. I mean, just 4 years in, right? And you said
Yeah.
multi-million dollar business. I mean, it
Yeah.
takes, I've run a business for 18 years and I know how much work and energy and
Right.
that it takes. So you guys have just had, what do you think just the component of this success? Is it the kind of the mission behind it?
Yeah, it's funny. It's multifaceted for sure, but right place, right time. Post COVID, a lot of companies were getting really into like the woke corporatism of advocating for, very anti-Christian,
Hmm.
American values, even very secular values, pro-choice values. So you saw like this, like political activism in corporate America. So there was a very much of a swing in the other direction from like, millions and millions of Americans that share a conservative biblical worldview who are like, yeah, I don't want to spend my dollars, with people that actively try to destroy the very worldview I believe in.
Yeah.
So I'd say, founding our company during that time was, a part of it. And quite frankly, it didn't exist. No one had a pro-life, coffee come this idea of, coffee is a great way to have a mission, to share your story, to advocate for certain values, and really to bring people together around those values. Think of Black Rifle Coffee, what they do with veterans, and they have that, that stream in the Second Amendment. And they're obviously an incredibly successful company. So, in the same vein, we have this, very large, passionate group that we're getting to embrace, which is the pro-life, movement in America, and just had this product for, for that community. And so that's really what led to the growth. But it's a very long-winded answer. All to say is like right place, right time, good product fit. But the best thing is like, a quality of our coffee. We could talk about
Hmm.
that later. But, the funny thing is like, you don't want to just say you're pro-life or say you advocate for certain like values without actually, backing it up with your product or service. So you
Yeah.
have to have a really good product, and that's what we do. So I'm really proud of that, and that's definitely led to the rapid growth of our customer base now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit. Obviously, you said you didn't come from the coffee
Hmm.
business world. Coffee business, I mean, I don't know anything about the coffee business. I would imagine it's pretty competitive. I mean, I look
Right.
around, I live in northern Indiana and we have quite a few coffee shops. So I know it's a competitive market, but where do you start with this and how do you make it successful in the coffee world?
Right. I had to learn it. I was very passionate about coffee at the time, so I wasn't like, totally unaware of the industry. And just finding the right partners. So for us, it was the most ethical sourcing, which is through direct trade. So we don't buy through a brokerage, we don't buy blind, we buy directly from farmers. So right there, that sets us apart in terms of exceptional quality, making sure we're paying farmers 3 times what fair trade requires. So that's number one. Number two, it's all specialty grade. So it's the highest end specialty grade, and it scores an 85 plus on the Q scoring system, which is kind of like just the, a scoring system. How do you rank coffees, right? Like what's better, what's worse. And so we really kind of, honed in on the highest quality specialty grade from direct from farmers. And then on top of that, our coffee's lab tested for mold. So making sure it's mold free. So
Mm,
like there's a lot of, rigorous things we're doing behind the scenes that's like separating us on the coffee level, that's going to be much better than your average cup of coffee from, either a coffee shop or a grocery aisle.
yeah.
Which, on the product level is, again, that's how we're, able to really grow. And also like, customers are surprised, like, oh, I just bought it for the, the cause, but I
Mission.
didn't realize it's the best
It's
coffee I
really
ever had, which is a
good.
very common review.
And so they're repeat customers now, right? Because
Oh,
they
100%.
buy
Yeah.
first for the cause and they buy
Yeah.
second for, for the cause and the quality of that.
100%.
That's awesome. So you came from the
Right.
politician world.
Yeah. Politics. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, what's that like to work in Washington D.C. and the politics in this generation? I mean, a lot of times Christianity. I mean, we just seen right. It's just been a storm
Right.
recently with the news events. So what's that been like, man, for you?
Yeah. It was a great learning experience. And I will say, like, it was disheartening from the sense that very little change can sometimes happen on the political level. It can. And there's like this somewhat of a fallacy of like, as believers, as Christians, our values can only be, advocated for or implemented on the political level, like this idea that we're not very impactful on the personal or the you know business level, or through commerce, or just
Mhm.
something that's in the regular realm, whether that's business life or family. We have to wait
Right.
for politics to make a decision for us, or to kind of change the status quo on a certain issue. So that was kind of the biggest learning experience. Like, that doesn't really happen much in DC. And also, on both sides of the aisle, obviously on the left there's zero regard for faith or family, or a biblical worldview, and on the right it's somewhat there, but not even that important. So
Mhm.
for me, it was like this idea of, like, if we really want to advocate for life, and I was very passionate about the pro-life movement, like, we can do that in the business world. We can do that in the for-profit space. It doesn't have to wait on politicians to you know make these policies come to life. Like, we can have a real change, saving lives, without the government. We can do that ourselves. And again, that's not to say that laws don't matter. It's not to say that we don't need good policy, which can happen. It's just like, that's not the only thing that matters. There's a lot more work we can do on the day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, no, I love that. I love to see just more faith-driven entrepreneurs in the for-profit world, because a lot of
Right.
times you're right. I mean, it's like, hey, maybe go into politics, or maybe I'll go into nonprofit, start a charity, and do that, which is awesome. Uh,
Hmm.
but I just love seeing people like yourself just leading a business, and leading it from your heart, leading it from faith. So
Hmm.
so amazing. You say this, that Jesus is my business partner. What does that look like for you in your business? Like, can you give us some examples? Like, yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you the most impactful thing. It's when we first had the idea for a pro life. When I first had the idea for a pro life coffee company, I was like, okay, what does that mean? Like, you just say you're pro life? Does it mean you just donate a portion of each sale? I was like, no, we have to be like super transparent on what we're giving back. So, the first thing that came to my head was like a tithe, giving back 10% of every sale. It sounded easy. It just sounded simple. I was like, oh yeah, 10%. Doesn't seem like a lot. Hindsight's 2020. It is a large portion of our profits.
I'm sure.
And
Yeah.
so it is. But I had that idea from the beginning. It's like, okay, if we're going to be this pro life coffee company, if we're actually going to, advocate for these values, it has to be somewhat transparent. Like, we want to show the impact we're making. We want to, like, say that, like, because you're drinking this coffee, you're actually helping save lives. And I didn't feel confident saying that without being completely transparent with our dollars. So 10% of every sale, everyone knows how much that is. Move the decimal one place over. And so that was it. But when I started, getting going off the ground, I was like, wow, that's a huge portion of our profits. Then I start looking into it. It's upwards of 50% of our profits. I'm like looking at other businesses. I'm like, oh wait, most businesses donate 10% of profits, not every sale. I'm like, oh, that's a big difference.
Right.
And I was like, this is like where I was struggling. And this is totally how Jesus is our business partner, because I was praying. I was like, Lord, I don't know if this makes sense. I'm worried. I have to, like, make money from this. I have to, like, feed my family. Like, this is going to be my life's work. Like, this has to be like a profitable company. And I remember just praying. I was like, Lord, I'll trust that, for this to be successful, you have to make it profitable, but I'll also make sure we stick with this donation model. If you can just help it grow, sustainably, profitably, and just, like, safely,
Hmm.
month over month. And he did that, and still does. And it's been like this, I felt like I almost, and it sounds weird, but like made a deal with God, but it was more like a trust in him
Mm.
is really what it is this idea that, like, hey, we're doing something abnormal. It doesn't make sense on paper, but Lord, if this is your will, you'll make it work. And he has. We've been able to grow. We've never taken outside funding. It's been profitable month over month. And it's incredibly generous. We have to have a super lean team, and we don't have, like, a lot of room for extra expenses. But it's been a business that's been sustainable, and it's growing, and we're able to give tens of thousands of dollars a month, over $50,000 a month to pregnancy
Wow.
centers because of this model. So it's a sustainable model that's actually funding the pro-life movement.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm trying to imagine, yeah, just the cost and the sacrifice that you're putting out there. I was talking to a coach one time, and he said, most businesses, if they're 5% like profitable, then they're kind of, going to the hospital, but 10% is about normal. 15% is they're doing really, really well. So, for
Right.
you to kind of use those numbers and 10%, like you're giving, yeah, seriously giving away a lot of your profits right there. So,
Yeah, it is. But again, we're been able to be sustainable and profitable
yeah,
still with all that. So
yeah.
it's been a blessing.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about just a calling.
Hmm.
Callings come with a cost, right? We've already talked
Hmm.
about that, and but you're being obedient
Hmm.
to the mission, being obedient to the kingdom. But is there anything else? Any stories that kind of come to mind when you think about this calling has came at a cost at your own life? Maybe it's a relationship, a reputation, resources. Anything else that kind of comes to mind when the sacrifice that you've had to make to go in this particular direction?
Well, I'll say like when I first started the company, it just started as a side hustle, and it wasn't like, oh, this is going to turn into this very large, business. One day, I was like, yeah, let's just raise money for our local center. But it's soon started to gain traction, and during that time, I had another full time job. I got laid off from that job, so I was at this like crossroads of like, what do I do now? And that was like one of the hardest challenges in my life because I wasn't confident enough to go all the way in on 7 weeks coffee, but because I got laid off, it like kind of forced
Forced
me.
in.
Yeah, and it was at hindsight the best thing that's ever happened to me because it's this company is obviously what God has called me to do. It's been life changing in terms of work and purpose, and what we've been able to accomplish. And I'd say it's funny when you start a business, and when you kind of hear all these stories of other business owners. Like I think of Walt Disney, who sold like his car, which is his last asset, to do one more filming of like his original cartoon. It's like all these people that have like sacrificed so much. It sounds like fun in a story. Then I did not experience that to the nearest level, but like getting laid off and just realizing like, oh wow, I gotta like make this work to like turn this into a career, or I gotta like hustle back out there and get a job. And when you feel like your back's against the wall a little bit, um it's a cool moment, but it's also a testing moment. And that's why entrepreneurship is such a risk reward thing. And not everyone has the stomach for it, I'd say. But for me, it was the best thing ever happened to me. And through all that, it's like just makes you so reliant on God. Like every day is like, Lord, just help me make the right decision, because I don't know what to do yet. Like I'm still learning this business. Like I'm
Yeah,
only a few months in. So
right.
all of that is what's led behind what God has called me today.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, I think we all have faced like a crossroads like that, and I remember, it took me back to my crossroads when I had to make that decision. Like, hey, am I going to go all in, or am I going to, or not, right? And just keep it
Right.
as a side hustle, and then do that. So that's awesome. It's risky.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about, like, has there been like a mistake or an error that you're like,
Mm.
oh man, like I learned here, but I learned not to do that. But earlier in the business that you can talk to us about.
You know, man, there's so many. And this is like my broad advice to like entrepreneurs now. It's like when you first start a business, like there's this weird phenomenon of um you actually don't know anything about your business yet because you just started it. And so like you have to tread very lightly with decisions. You got to be able to pivot, and you have to just make decisions that aren't like catastrophic. And that's like the best advice I can
Mhm.
give, is because it's so easy to like put yourself at risk right away early on and make long-term decisions that have long-term effect when you really don't know anything yet. So I guess I'd say, first of all, I think we've done a really good job of never like backing ourselves in a corner where making decisions where you can't undo, which
Mm.
obviously you can do that. I've had multiple people try to buy pieces of the business. I almost sold some of it to different investors, and luckily I'm happy I didn't do that. But the biggest thing I've had I had a some difficult relationships with suppliers, and just realizing that you can't trust people like on word. You do have to get things in writing, as much as you want to be like a Christian and say like whatever
Word
you
of
say
bond.
goes. And I've definitely learned my lesson from that like it's good to get things in writing from people, because you never know what's going to happen. And that's been the biggest challenge, is like you kind of got to learn the fortitude to like protect your business too.
Yeah, yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter how long you've been in business, you have to make, and I always try to think long term. I was talking to one of my teammates today, and I'm thinking 5, 6 months down the road, and what could happen, and the long term effects of some of these decisions right
Right.
now. And I want to ask you this: so a lot of people, is business guys, I talk to a lot of business guys, and we try to we separate our business from our ministry, for
Hmm.
example, right? So we do maybe a ministry over here and go to church over here, do some small groups,
Hmm.
and then we have our business. And you've been able to obviously to integrate that.
Hmm.
What advice would you give to people that are leading a business and they want to integrate more of their faith into their businesses?
Yeah, I love that question. To me, it's all about like your realm of influence. Like your business can be the greatest witnessing opportunity and also um, impact for changing people's views and their thoughts and deeply held beliefs on whether it's faith or politics or certain ideological positions. Like you can have a big influence in like how you advocate for, either a Christian worldview or, even, like for us, the pro-life issue. Like, don't be afraid to have that realm of influence. Like, I was talking on another podcast before about this idea of like, it's okay to be partisan in your views as a business owner. The idea that like you can have a clear set of values.
Mm,
It's like so often, like I think this is what's happened, like why our cultures become so secular and like anti-Christ, anti-Christian, and very like progressive is because we just kind of silently just like stayed or kept our like religious views or our conservative views and within the church, like, oh, in this realm it's okay to be like, this is what I believe, but like in the business realm or what I do
mhm,
for work or the business I own, like I have to be like nonpartisan. I'm like, no,
right.
like it's okay to be, partisan, to share your values, to like, and what that looks like, I'm not, it's different for everyone. Maybe, your business is a very like, you know un unpolitical business in nature. It could be, from lawn care or to like some type of HVAC company, but you have an influence over your employees. You have an influence of how you talk to your customers. Like all of that matters, and those
Mhm.
interactions matter. And like, don't be afraid to like be um, clear where you stand. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Do you do anything like with your team
Mhm.
that really incorporates your faith?
We're really open about it. So, everyone on our team is a believer, and that's awesome that we have that in common, and we're able to talk about like things very openly. And I love that because, like, some I'm sure a lot of people are in these situations where they work for a company, or in this the worst part, like I was saying before, you could own a company and you're not outspoken. So, I think
Right.
it's awesome that like we are as a team all outspoken. We can talk about faith, we can talk about life. We do a lot of events together as a team, and that just is like a really bonding, thing where we're actually able to share like our deepest held convictions.
Mhm.
And that's welcomed, in our company.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a story that kind of reminds you of why you do this? Obviously, you give a lot of money to some pregnancy care centers.
Yeah.
Is there anything that comes to mind that you're like, oh yes, this is why we're doing this?
Yeah, I'll take you back. So when I graduated college, this kind of is, kind of how it all started. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life or career. I didn't like my major. I played college golf and I dealt with an injury after that, so I couldn't like pursue that anymore
What
professionally.
was your major, by the way?
Supply chain management.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but
I couldn't tell you either. I mean, I didn't pay attention much in school. Like I was into sports and that was it. And it was like when I graduated, I felt like I was holding nothing in terms of what I had for me. I didn't know what I wanted to do, what I was called to do. But I just remember that summer after I graduated, I got to intern at my church and just, I was interested in ministry. And I knew after that, I knew I didn't want to like work in ministry. But the one thing we did, I got to visit a pregnancy care center. It's in Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I grew up. And, I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to the Cleveland Pregnancy Center. And in my mind, I was like, they're probably this big institution. They're in downtown Cleveland. They probably have a handful, a big staff. They would do a lot of work. I remember going there. It wasn't in the greatest area of town. It was this very small office in a very small room, and it was just a couple people, the a director, and like I think a few volunteers. And then you hear these stories of like the women they're serving that are coming in either off the street or they're coming from an abusive relationship, and they're contemplating abortion. Their boyfriends telling them to get an abortion, and they're providing every resource possible to help save these children and
Mhm.
provide for the women in need. And I remember sitting there, I was like, this is the most worthy cause
Hmm.
to support, yet they receive the least amount of funding. So you
Hmm.
have the most worthy cause, like supporting women and children, like the most vulnerable in
Hmm.
crisis,
Hmm.
and they need way more money than they're getting to help protect these women. And that was like the light bulb moment of I want to help them. And this is way before 7 weeks coffee, but I remember that so vividly of like that's who should be getting this money.
Hmm.
And so when I started 7 weeks coffee, that's like the whole goal of it was donate local. Like how do we find every pregnancy care center in the country and give directly to them, because they're going to know what to do with that money. And
Hmm.
so our first check, was back to that Cleveland Pregnancy Center when I started 7 weeks coffee. So 3 years later, when I had the idea, have sold our first month of coffee, sold $8,000, wrote them a check for $800, and they, were obviously very thankful. And that was like the genesis of it. But that how I, was inspired to give to them is because I got to see what they were doing. And that's what we want to continue to do today, is to give locally. And yeah, that's our mission.
Yeah, no, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I was just taken into my imagination of you stepping into that facility. That's so cool. How it
Yeah.
has such an impact on you. Do you have kids?
I just had a son. Yeah. He's just almost 3 months old.
Okay,
Yeah.
congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. It's awesome. He's keeping us up at night. And
Yeah.
actually, he just started sleeping through the night. So
Good.
we're
Wow,
getting
that's
our sleep
great.
now. I know he's a little trooper. But yeah, I mean, that's been life changing. We're obviously incredibly pro life, but experiencing it for the first time and actually going through the pregnancy of like seeing the stages of development and hearing, the baby's heartbeat and seeing him kick. It's just like amazing to see like the life within the womb.
Yeah.
And then you can't fathom how like abortion is still like a
Thing.
commonality within our country, that this is like an acceptable practice, and it just blows my mind. So
Yeah.
if anything, it's inspired me more.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that was kind of my question is like how's just being a dad just impacted you, and you've already kind of talked about the mission, but just personally, how's that impacted you right now?
Well, it's it's funny, like when we first found out we were pregnant, like you definitely have that overwhelming feeling like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like I remember the first night I'm like staying up, like, okay, we got to do all these things, we got to get ready. And like, we've been married for a few years. We're in a very stable, environment. So like, it's all exciting for us. But at the same time, I could see like why women who like have an unplanned pregnancy, or in college or something with the, a boyfriend they don't like anymore, like why they're
Right.
like very scared. Like I could see like the overwhelming nature of why, you know, unthinkably, but people do consider abortion. And so
Mhm.
it's made me like put myself in both shoes of like, okay, now how do we actually meet those needs? So like, you know, there's all these other options before abortion. Like abortion's not on the table. Like let's help you financially. Let's help you if there needs to be an adoption process. Like let's meet you where you are. So this is not the scariest time of your life, because for us it was very, joyful. And actually like having the baby and how he's been over the last few months has been nothing but life giving. Like holding
Yeah.
your son for the first time it's been something you can never describe. And it's like, that is, everyone has that opportunity to have that joy from it. But most people are scared from that in the, consider abortion because of their circumstances. And like, how do we bring that joy into their lives?
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. No, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, man. What's as we kind of wrap up the podcast there, I just have a few
Sure.
more questions, but you're a young guy. I see a lot of young. I just hired a young guy on our team. He's about 23 years old. And I'm seeing the next generation is really just, I don't know, they're very mission and purpose driven, and
Right.
you're putting out a stance and you're putting out a message. And what do you hope to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs? What do you hope the message is?
Well, I hope there's a lot more entrepreneurs. Like I think this idea of that like entrepreneurship can't be a career path people choose. Is unfortunate, because I think it's so many times people think like, oh, that's other people have to be entrepreneurs. I have to work for someone.
Right.
Or they don't consider it like an actual career that you can have. Like you can start your own business. You have your own employees. You can have your own, way you want to run things. And like, that's okay to have that like type of ownership. Like, and I think we need more people to do that, to embrace it. And like, I want to encourage more people to start businesses,
Hmm.
whether it's just side hustles in the beginning or, raising money from investors perhaps, there's it's just a missing thing in our country. Like let's encourage young people to like get started in business, because you can actually have the most impact, in what you believe, in your values, and in your mission through business. So
Mm.
I just want to see more people start their businesses
Yeah.
and, get into the game.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's really exciting. So I have a daughter; she's 18, and she's
Awesome.
studying entrepreneurship. And she interned for us last summer, and she's a freshman at school right now at college.
Right on.
And yeah, I just love seeing her. She has to start a little business or start a business in college and make some profit. So it's just really cool to see young people
Right.
and their ideas. I'm like, man, like this 23-year-old guy, I just hired him a few days ago, and I was supposed to sit down and train him on what we're doing, and he starts showing me stuff, and I'm like, hey, train me. Like, what do you
That's
like?
awesome.
Because he's all, it's just different mindsets, and they've been learning it with a lot of these tech tools and AI tools and stuff like that I don't know a lot about,
Right.
right? So it's just really awesome to see that. And
And another thing is like the idea of like believers being entrepreneurs, I feel like has been like overlooked, because we think to live out our Christian faith in the most Christ-like way must mean like we can't make money, or we have to work in a nonprofit or like a church. Like to be as on mission means like within nonprofit something.
mm,
And I just don't think that's true. Like we can have such impact, through a business, like through for profit, and even more so perhaps. They're both needed, but it's like that's a huge calling. And you think about what's the use of money? Well, it's God's that we steward. So if we have that mindset, why not as Christians shouldn't we steward more money, not
mm,
less? Like, why do we like, give up this idea of like wealth is for the secular, when
mm.
as believers, shouldn't we want to steward it because we believe we have a better way of using it? Like that's
Yeah,
what I
it's
want to
true.
inspire people for.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about stewardship. And
Right.
someone asked me, is like, well, how much is your business God's, or how much is money God's? And I guess just all of it. I mean, that's just
Yeah, I mean, it's all of it to be used for like, how he leads
yeah,
you to use it. And
yeah,
I'd rather, it's like, wouldn't you rather have like the CEO of Amazon and Jeff Bezos, his wealth be a Christian in that position? Like,
yeah.
wouldn't that be a better, is there better potential for that money? I'm not saying anything
Right.
against him. I'm just saying like theologically, yes, you should want that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that.
So,
Last couple questions. Finish the sentence. At the end of your life, success will look like.
oh gosh, thousands of babies saved, and the next generation of Christian business leaders inspired.
Hmm, I love that. Anything else you want to say? Any other advice?
No, I appreciate the time. I mean, it's always fun sharing our story, and um, I, with anything, it's like we're still just getting started. And if you have an idea out there, just get it going, because you never know what God can do with it. Because that's my experience and what I've experienced with Seven Wings Coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage even the guys that have been business owners, like I said, I'm 18 years now, but
Mm-hmm.
there's sometimes we just get complacent, and
Mm-hmm.
it's guys like you that can inspire us, and new ideas can come, and like, I still have this purpose or this calling, or I can
Right.
do something
Right.
like this, and it's just
We
it's
all
really
have
cool.
purpose. Yeah.
It's really, really
Amen.
cool. Well, how can someone get some Seven Wings coffee?
Yeah, it's all online. So just go to sevenweekscoffee.com. Tons of great things up there. This is probably coming out during the Christmas season here. So,
Yeah.
well, a lot of cool specials. So definitely check it out.
Cool. Awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Check out Seven Weeks Coffee. And this is a wrap with Anton. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Anton. God bless
Thank
you,
you so
man.
much, Brett.